from WBBZ-TV Sports. It's time to beat the champ. Now, here are your hosts, Paul Peck and Sue Novoitsky.
Well, hi, everybody, and welcome to Week 2 of Beat the Champ in Lockport, New York at Brad Angelo Lanes with Janelle Sabin and Hall of Famer Sue Novoitsky. I'm Paul Peck. Well, it's Brad Angelo Lanes, but if Chuck Jagodzinski keeps this up, we may have to change the name on the sign in the front of this place.
Oh, no, I don't think that's ever going to happen. But anyways, he did put on a great show, and he's got some really tough competition today, one of them being Brad's protege, Tom Sorce, which is we're going to see in one of the first matches, who is a student of his Bowl U, and I'm sure we'll hear a lot about that as we go along. Yeah,
Tom Sorce, Tim Finked, and then the legendary Gary Kinyon are the three bowlers that will try to end the four-match winning streak of Chuck Jagodzinski. He swept our first week's show by averaging 239.
Yeah, he really found the secret to these lanes because, as we saw in the first week, carry was not a guarantee. It kept the scores pretty equal, but Chuck did. He was able to find the key to that.
Yeah, you have not had to erase Chuck's name off the Castellone scoreboard. I'm curious whether you might or might not before this week is over.
Me too, but Chuck's a great bowler, but he does have some tough competition today, so I guess we'll have to see.
All right, it's going to be another fun week of bowling here. It's Beat the Champ in Lockport at Brad Angelo Lanes, week number 2, so let's get rolling. Really good match to get us started here in week number 2 at Brad Angelo Lanes. It's Chuck Jagodzinski in that winning streak against Tom Sorce, making his second appearance here on Beat the Champ. Last time we saw Tom was down at the Jamestown Bowling Company in May of this year, but regardless of how many appearances Tom has made or not, we know he is one of the top bowlers in Western New York and one of Brad Angelo's proteges, I guess we could say. So Brad will really be able to give us some good insight, and you can explain how do you start with a bad shot like that one, Brad.
Well, it's probably because you heard you say Brad Angelo.
Well, you know, it's you know, we don't want to get in Tom's head right that quickly, but if that's what it takes. So tell everybody a little bit about what we need to know about Tom Sorce, the outstanding bowler, 32 years old from Blasdell.
Well, I'll tell you, if you want to be able to talk to somebody and have a good knockdown, drag-out argument, Tom's the guy. Because we've had so many times on the road where
a lot of people say that about you, don't they?
Yeah, and that's why we get along so well. We get out on the road together, and we could literally argue for 200 or 300 miles. And it's a good time.
I was going to say, that does make those miles go by, doesn't it?
Yeah, you don't have to worry about whether or not you're dozing off or falling asleep or anything like that. It's just, hey, just keep the pot stirring and you're good to go.
And a good start for Chuck Jagodzinski as he looks to add to his 4-match winning streak. So are you and Tom arguing about bowling? Are you arguing about sports? Are you arguing about life? Are you arguing about food? Or who's driving? What are you arguing about?
Mostly about anything.
Okay.
We got in an argument one time. It lasted a good 2 hours as to how we were going to decide how to chop up the gas bill. It took us two hours.
So you were going to say we argued for 2 hours over what we were going to argue about, right? What topic we were going to argue about?
Because normally when I pick Tom up on the way out, I have a full tank of gas. Okay, so I paid for the full tank of gas to start, but then when it ends up getting figured out as to when we have to stop in Ohio for our next thing of gas, I don't know. I guess I couldn't it's just a difference of opinion is what it comes down to.
I gotcha. Good strike in the second frame, good bounce back there.
That's when you got to call somebody to mediate the situation, because what it is you keep
Are you volunteering your duties?
Yeah, you keep track of it all, and you end with a full tank of gas, and then with that total amount gets split in two. So when you get home, you fill a tank up, and now you've added it all together, and that's divided by 2, and that's the way to do it.
See, you travel
with women. When you travel with women, you have to have this stuff figured out. You want to talk about. See, they'll debate it and argue it, where girls are just harbored against you forever. So.
Yeah. All right, so 2 good strikes in a row for Tom Sorce, and here's Chuck Jagodzinski moving to the 3rd frame. 22nd appearance here on Beat the Champ for the 51-year-old from Lancaster. 21 wins, just 12 losses. Those 21 wins and 22 appearances, second to only Mike Zarcone since Beat the Champ has been back for the last 3 years. And as we mentioned, he is working a 4-match winning streak.
And he's opted to use a different ball in each lane.
He has. He's changed balls on the right lane. I think it had something to do with what he had mentioned last week when he was finishing up, that you know, he felt that the lanes were transitioning a little bit. It looks like he's changed balls. Or no, he doesn't.
Nope.
This is the same ball that he was using. So if it was me, I'd go back to that ball and make a little subtle change. The other ball didn't look like it wanted to read properly.
I would agree with you 100%. I mean, sometimes that works for you. How often have you had to do that, where you use a different ball in each lane? Are you an advocate of that, or do you think that's a last resort?
Well, I think whatever you decide to do, you have to be fully committed to it, and then be able to see what the results are, and if you really like the results or not. Whoa! Look at that break he just got there.
Wow.
Synchronized pinfalling, one of the other talents for Tom Sorce.
No, that isn't something that we normally teach in the Bowl U workshop. That we teach in the
Maybe you
summer.
should.
This feels like a good time to take a short break. We'll be right back with more action on Beat the Champ. Welcome back to Beat the Champ. Let's get back to the action here on WBBZ-TV.
Yeah, I mean, certainly being able to make the ball go right through the nose and knock over the 6-7 at the identical time.
That was pretty cool.
That was pretty cool.
Even Janelle liked that. I can tell that Janelle, by the Castellone Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram scoreboard, really liked that one. She likes writing those strikes down anyway. And that's a little more traditional strike for Tom Sorce. 4 in a row for him. So even though I mentioned Chuck has averaged 239 through last week's shows here, he's being pushed pretty hard right now. And responding.
That was pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
4 strikes in the first 5 for both guys.
I think that lends to your statement about committing to it, because he wants to stay in that spot, and it looks like it's biting up a little bit earlier in 20, and but he threw that great.
Yeah, my prediction is here, this could easily take a 259 or better to win this match.
Chuck Jagodzinski has won 5 in a row only once in his Beat the Champ run. That came in 2016 when he did it at Jamestown. So a win today for Chuck would allow him to tie that 5-match winning streak and certainly try to do his best to keep it alive. And remember, the record here on Beat the Champ is 14 in a row, at least this version of Beat the Champ. Can't drop any mentions of records in Beat the Champ, particularly when we're in this place, without being very specific about which version of the show we're on.
Yeah, you better make sure you do Papa Nin some justice.
That's
here.
right. Of course, the legendary Brad Angelo, Brad's dad, and of course, even to this day, any conversation of this show usually results in someone bringing up Brad Angelo and the incredible stretch from the 70s that made him a household name in this town.
He was a great dad. I wasn't alive when that string was going on. That was back in the 1960s.
That's right. It was the 60s. You're right.
And we actually have a nice photo of him along with Chuck Healy. I just got back from the framer. That's hanging in our restaurant here. So it's pretty neat to be able to know that his career meant so much to so many people around here in Buffalo, and still, whenever I go anywhere, people still mention how nice it was to be able to watch my dad through all those years.
Yeah, and that was in the day when this show was a 3-match series per week, and your dad went on that incredible long winning streak, not just by winning individual matches like we have now, but by winning 3 matches and a series on a week-to-week basis. So Chuck Jagodzinski's run of 4 strikes in a row comes to an end. He'll grab the spare here in the 8th frame. Meanwhile, Tom Sorce is working 6 strikes in a row. And there you can get a look at the update on the Castellone Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram scoreboard. Don't forget, we've got qualifying going on at the Rapids Bowling Center right now for next month's show. Top qualifier in that round of 24 wins a television valued at $500 from Dirt Cheap TV. Oh, Tom is bowling great right now. What are you seeing, Brad? What are you seeing from Tom?
Well, I'll tell you, he threw in the second and the third frame, he threw 2 really quality shots. Fortunately, he got that good break in the fourth frame, and sometimes you get a really nice break like that. You feel like you're living on borrowed time, so to speak. So he threw 4 pretty quality shots right after that. He's doing what we call he's just driving it to the pocket and letting the lane take it. He's taking his hand out of it. He's not trying to hit it very hard at all. There again, he may very well have heard me talking. So.
All right, so that's a little difficult 3-6-10 on the right-hand side that Tom will have to pick up here in the 9th frame. That ends that stretch of 7 consecutive strikes and certainly leaves Chuck in this match there where it looked like we might have been able to put this one on the board the way Tom was bowling. So this is a little bit of a challenge. Let's see what he does.
Well, the significance of him getting 7 pins there, it's very important to note because Chuck's final number in his score is at an 8, and now Tom's final number is at a 7. So he came back behind Chuck in count. If I'm Chuck, I'm thinking, all right, I got to get up here. And if I strike out, that makes Tom Sorce get up and double in the 10th. So that's a very important 7 count that he had there.
We definitely talked about that a lot as we've been going through this show for 3 years, is that count is really important. Sometimes it could just be a count on a fill ball. You can't let down. You have to get as many pins as you can.
Chuck a little disappointed there on that, leaving the 10 pin here on the first roll of the 10th frame.
Yeah, so now that unfortunately it doesn't really matter that much. Chuck with a spare and a strike gets to 238, and Tom Sorce is already in the 250s. So even with an open, Tom's going to have 240. Tom needs to get up and make sure he stays behind the foul line and get some good count. And looks like Chuck's run is going to come to an end here. Yeah,
well, it's been a good run for Chuck, but a couple of missed frames there that we talked about, and Tom threw 7 in a row, and that puts a lot of pressure on. So it's good to go. It's a win for Tom Sorce, and he'll end the winning streak of Chuck Jagodzinski, and it's Tom Sorce that will move on to match number 2 here. It's week number 2 in Lockport at Brad Angelo Lanes. We'll be back to talk to Chuck and get you ready for match number 2 when we return right after this. .267 to 237, a win for Tom Sorce. Chuck Jagodzinski's win streak comes to an end. You were right at your average for what you've been bowling over the last 4. It just wasn't enough today, was it?
No, it is hit the pocket. I slowly lost my carry through the 4th show, so and he got a lot more strikes than I did, so.
It's been a nice, consistent run for you. You've been, the scores were consistent. You've been bowling well. You feel like you're at a good spot in where you're bowling right now?
I didn't have no misses in 4 games, so 40 clean. Just if you carry more, you win more. But I gotta make my spares, and I made all my spares, so I'm happy about that.
All right, we always like it when there's a happy Chuck Jagodzinski, don't we?
It's always nice when Chuck's happy. Chuck, great showing, great run. Sorry to see it coming to an end, but thanks for coming in and thanks for participating.
Yep, no problem.
All right, so it was 4 in a row until this one. It's Tom Sorce that moves on for match number 2. We'll have that for you when we return to Lockport right after this. Match number 2 here at Brad Angelo Lanes. Our winner, Tom Sorce, to be challenged by Tim Finked. I'll tell you about Tim in just a moment, but Tom is going to start things off. That was an impressive 267 to 237 win to end Chuck Jagodzinski's win streak, and included a stretch of 7 consecutive strikes. And let's see if Tom can keep that rolling. And he started off a little shaky in the first frame of the first match, didn't he? So maybe he just needs that to get his mind in the right place.
Do you think?
Or not?
Well, he changed balls. He went from the phase 2 that he was using. He went to a storm matchup, solid, And he's trying to still play really straight, but it looks like there's a lot of friction in that first part of the lane. Now keep in mind, this is the fourth show that the fourth match, or fifth match rather. Fifth match.
Second
so
show, fifth match.
So there's been 8 games already bowled on this pair of lanes, and keeping up a transition for any bowler is something that's a must.
Right.
He's Brad Angelo, Buffalo Bowling Hall of Famer, PBA regular, and of course the proprietor here at Brad Angelo Lanes. Nobody knows these lanes better than Brad does, and Tim Finked got a pretty good handle on it with a strike in the first frame. 5th appearance on the show for Tim Finked. He is 34 years old from Depew. He has yet to win here on Beat the Champ, so that will be clearly his goal in this match. Last time we saw Tim was at Classic Lanes in September when he bowled and then lost to Chuck Jagodzinski, who of course just lost in our last match to Tom Sorce. It's always all connected here, some one way or the other.
Yeah, Tim's got a great shot. I happened to be here the day that Tim qualified, and then I was here for the top 24 roll-off, and Tim bowled great, and he's using the same ball, playing the same part of the lane that he's playing. And I think Tom's got his work cut out. Even though he shot 260 in the first match, Tim has a great reaction, and being on the left side of the lane, there hasn't been too much change over there on the left.
Right. I was going to bring that up. Now we've had a lot of play on the right-hand side, which is going to make it a little squirrely. Now that one went long on him. Probably moved his eyes in and caught some oil.
Yeah, but the challenge is that with that weak of a ball, the matchup is more of a weaker ball. So it's going to have a tendency to hydroplane more down lane. So he probably did move a little left, but then you still got to be able to take your speed down a little to give it a chance to be able to get into that roll that you need.
Right.
Tom, as Brad talked about earlier in the first match, bowls on tour, has bowled all over the world. Some big wins, some great performances in Dubai, a 3rd place finish in 2015, a 5th place finish in Egypt in 2015. What's it like to bowl internationally, Brad? I know you do a lot of it, and clearly Tom does it very well also.
We were actually together on that trip. We were fortunate enough to take a boat ride out on the Red Sea. We went and visited the pyramids. So we got to do some bowl use stuff right at the base of the big pyramid. It's great. It's great whenever you can get around the world and do some sightseeing. We went to the top of the Burj Khalifa Tower, which is the tallest building in the world. Tom and I had some hibiscus juice when we were up at the top and took some pictures as though we were getting ready to jump and end it all, but we didn't. We're still here. It was a great trip to be together with friends.
And yet another struggling frame for Tom Sorce, and that's 2 opens in the first 3 as he's just struggling to find the pocket right now. And that's a great opportunity for Tim Finked to jump right in and take control of this match, even though we're only at 3rd frame.
As it usually seems, the lanes don't always break down the same. And in this case, I'd say that it's looking that way.
Oh, of course. I mean, as I said, Tom's dealing with that friction, there's no doubt, and then there is some of oil carry down lane. It's going to be very speed sensitive right now for the right-handers, whoever it is, until they get matched up. Once they get matched up, then it's up, and then they're back to getting in the strike mode again.
And that's a big miss there for Tim with an opportunity to grab a spare in the 3rd frame. He leaves an open. So 3 opens in the first 6 frames of this match between Tim and Tom, and somewhere along the line, somebody's going to want to win this one, or try to want to win this one.
Well, that's an inopportune spot to leave the door open for Tom, because Tom can and most likely will figure this out.
I think it's only a matter of time. It's just whether that amount of time that it takes is right now. He's only down 20 pins. There's still a number of frames to go. So, I don't think he's too alarmed. But if anything, he's thinking, all right, what am I going to do here? It looks like he's going to go back to the phase 2 that he shot 260 with the first game and make an adjustment.
Sue and I talk so much about those kinds of decisions in the course of a match. So many decisions that have to be made, a ball decision, an alignment, move left, move right. And I know that's a big part of what you're involved with the Bowl U program. What's the basic advice that you give to a bowler as to when and how to make those kinds of decisions?
Well, the first step, people ask all the time, Brad, what's your favorite ball? And it started out being a joke, but it really is the truth. My favorite ball is my eyeball. So it's all based on what you're able to see and recognize, and then transfer that into what decisions and choices you're going to make. Anybody can throw it faster or slower if they need to, but deciding what they're going to do and then choosing what direction they're going to go, and then being able to pull that off, that's really the tough part, and that's the beauty of the sport of bowling.
This looks like a good time to take a break. We'll be back with more Beat the Champ right after this. Welcome back to Beat the Champ.
I mentioned to you that he's from Depew, full-time occupation, general manager and a licensed optician at VisionWorks. So somebody who really knows how to have his eyes on the prize.
Well, Tim has a chance right now to really put some nails in the coffin. Tom has 59 in the fifth. He can only go to 209. And Tim right here, he can get to 2-teen pace, which he did. So now if I'm Tim, I'm thinking, all right, I just did my job. Now I just got to stay clean and really force Tom to show up to even put any pressure on me at all.
Right.
So Tim's in the driver's seat here.
There's Janelle at the Castellone Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram scoreboard. That's maybe one of the uglier 5-frame scores Tom Sorce's ever had in his life. But it's been a struggle. Opens in 1, 3, and 5, spares in 2 and 4, and certainly uncharacteristic for a high-level bowler like Tom Sorce. But it happens in this sport when you're fishing. Sometimes you're really fishing, and there is the first strike of the match for Tom.
Yeah, he went to a stronger ball there. He went to the new Storm Physics that just came out. It's had great reviews, and he just drilled that the other day. So he's been playing around with it. Probably doesn't know exactly how it rolls and matches up yet, so that's why he probably stayed with the Phase 2. But he did exactly what I had mentioned earlier. He moved a little bit left and slowed down a little bit, and I think he has a good chance to strike out here, but he's going to need a little help from Tim.
Right.
So that's 2 in a row for Tom as he does get that bounce back, but Tim Finked working 3 strikes in a row, in control of the match at the moment, and a couple more strikes going to put this one away, but you got to go out and do it, and certainly he knows he's bowling against a high-level opponent. Tim keeps pretty busy, bowls 3 nights a week at bowling centers around Western New York. And he will leave the 7-pin, so his 3 in a row streak comes to an end. He'll play for the spare here in frame number 7.
So I noticed that Tim is also using the Storm Physics. When did that ball come out?
That ball was just released here over the past month in middle November, and it's many of the guys were using it out on tour during the pre-launch period. Those of us that are on staff, we receive the balls before they reach the general public, and many of the guys on tour were using it. If you watched any of the last couple of TV shows, or if you watched any of the qualifying, you saw many of the guys using it. So if you start looking on the ball returns in the leagues you're bowling, you'll start seeing more and more of the physics. It's really a good ball.
Speaking of qualifying, not for the PBA Tour, but for this show, it's going on right now at the Rapids Bowling Center in Niagara Falls. And the top qualifier in the round of 24 wins a television valued at $500 from Dirt Cheap TV. And you see the look on Tim's face tells you all you need to know about that difficult leave in the 8th frame.
Oh, and we should mention that unusual is that it's not weekend qualifying at Rapids. It's actually going on during the week. So he's got Monday squads 6 and 8 p.m. and a Thursday squad at 8 p.m. So gives an opportunity to, if you're busy on the weekend, to actually still come out and qualify.
So there's another open for Tim. He's had 2. Tom's had 3. as we have sort of hit a wall here after some really high scores through our first 4 matches here at Brad Angelo Lanes. This is the first time that either bowler has struggled like this.
Well, the leaves that Tim has had, his opens were both on pocket hits, so he has not really lost the pocket. And this is big for Tom because he really wasn't mathematically out of it.
Yeah, that was almost a must situation right there for Tom.
It was.
He could have struck out for 2-0 something, and Tim had, because of that open, went back down to a 2-0 pace. So Tom is now down into the 180s, and Tim would have to go. Tim would have to go open to even give Tom a chance now.
So it's a spare in the 8th for Tom Sorce, but it's a big-time uphill climb here, as Brad just mentioned. So disappointing bounce back after the big 267-237 win over Chuck Jagodzinski to end Chuck's winning streak in the last match. But that's what's fun about this show and this game is a new winning streak is right around the corner for the next bowler to start one of his own. And once again, Tom's just struggling, just kind of all over the place a little bit, isn't he? And it happens, doesn't it? Even to the best of bowlers.
Well, that's one of those shots right there, I think, to where, your morale is kind of beat up and you're pretty much out of the match and you just kind of get up there and say, to heck with it, let me make this big aggressive move. And I don't know that he really threw that one the way he wanted to.
Yeah, and I think you're pretty dead on there, Brad. It's mentally you're checking out a little bit. You know what the reality is. So the reality of this one is that Tim Finkent's going to get his first Beat the Champ victory. We'll watch him here in the 9th frame. It's not going to be pretty, but it's going to be a win. They don't ask how they just ask you if you won or not by how many or what your score was. So good strike there in the 9th frame. Tim Finkent gets the win over Tom Sorce. We'll come back and talk to Tom and get you ready for a good matchup for our final match of the week between Tim and the legendary Gary Kinyon, all from Brad Angelo Lanes in Lockport. Beat the Champ is back right after this. Well, Tom, as much as you would like to forget about that match, you could do it about 15 seconds from now. What happened?
Yeah. I mean, the reality is when you see something that you don't like out there's a million different decisions that you can make, and I made the wrong one about 5 times. So, I mean, sometimes you get it right and you don't. And I mean, Tim did his job. I gave him plenty of chances. He took advantage of it, and that's all you can do. Just learn from it for next time. So
I thought he's the one who was supposed to teach you how to make all the right decisions.
I mean, I have a hard time listening to him. He just kind of goes in one ear and out the other now. So
Is that accurate, Brad?
Yeah. I mean, and then it ends up going right back in and where it belongs. So, but anyway, listen, great job. Yep. Thanks for bowling. I appreciate you coming down, and looking forward to another time.
Sounds good.
You might have to give that right back to him because he claims you owe him some gas money.
I don't know about that.
Right.
I don't know about that. He doesn't keep track very well.
Good to see Tom on the show. We know we're going to get him back. Tim Finkent versus Gary Kinyon. Going to be a fun one. That's match number 3. It's coming up next from Lockport. Well, this match is a guy in Tim Finkent who has been the Lockport Bowler of the Year against a guy who was the Lockport Bowler of the Century, and that would be Gary Kinyon. So this is going to be a fun match, and it's always great to have Gary on, and particularly in his neck of the woods up here in Niagara County. So Tim will have a little bit of a challenge, but getting the momentum of his first ever Beat the Champ victory. Let's see what Tim Finkent has in store. Our 3rd match of week number 2 here at Brad Angelo Lanes in Lockport. And that's a good start for Mr. Finkent.
Yeah, that was a very aggressive, confident shot there.
So did you have a chance to talk to Tom a little bit and do a little post-match breakdown, scouting analysis there?
I did. He gave me his analysis, and then I told him what I saw, and he agreed. So we at least agreed as to what we saw happening. And, he was at least committed to the shots that he made, even though they didn't turn out. So it was good. I'm actually interested in this match here because Gary, being a little softer speed as to what his choices are going to be, obviously first shot was pretty good there. So we'll see how things unfold.
8th appearance on the show for Gary Kinyon. 5 wins and 6 losses is his record. We saw him in October up at Island Lanes on Grand Island. That was the last time we had him. We usually, if we don't get Gary every month, we get him every other month. It seems he is one of our quote-unquote regulars here on the show. And of course, as we mentioned, from Lockport, 68 years old, a legend up here in the bowling ranks of Niagara County and all of Western New York. Let's not limit it to that.
You know, Brad, what I want to kind of pick your brain about is practice versus league bowling versus tournament bowling. So Gary is an avid practicer. And let's talk about the value of practice, because even as the years have gone by, you know, Gary is still competitive here with all ages and all rev rates and right-handed, left-handed. And I have to believe that some of that is because of the time he puts into the game.
Well, there's no doubt. I mean, even when I was growing up, Gary was one of the guys that practiced more than anybody else. And without a doubt, no matter what decision that you do make for what shot you're going to throw, you have to be able to execute that. And for years, Gary has had one of the more simple styles and simple games. But when he chooses what he's going to do, he's able to repeat that and get the job done. And as you see it with his first 2 strikes here, you know, he almost left that light 4.57, but he gets the pins flying around with little to no ball speed. And it's good to see, you know, that it gives me a hope that at that age I could still be kicking around.
But I guess it goes back to what we've talked about as far as committing to your decision when you're prepared and you know your game and you know you're going to be able to execute that shot because you've practiced it enough times. It makes it a little bit easier to commit to it and you don't second guess it.
No, so, I agree. Gary has been one of the guys that you would say, when there's nobody in the bowling center and you hear pins falling, oh, it must be Gary Kinyon.
Ray Bellett is another.
Ray Bellett is another one. 2 legends in the sport of bowling. Ray Bellett was in the Hall of Fame class that went in the Hall of Fame.
So that was cool for you to go in with him then, huh?
It was very cool to go in with him. A couple of the other people that were significant in my career, Mary Chase. I met Mary Chase at Through A Lanes when I was just bowling for Erie Community College. And to see her in the lifetime of dedication to the sport and to what she's meant to the sport, to see her joining the class of Hall of Famers the other night as well was really great to see and be a part of. So thank you, Mary, for everything you've done.
Gary leaves the 10-pin here in the 3rd frame after strikes in the first 2. I do think it's somewhat ironic that we went from the fastest bowler in Western New York and Chuck Jagodzinski to the most deliberate. Is that a nice way to say it here in Gary?
Deliberate is a very good word. It's actually making me feel like I'm talking very fast all of a sudden, and I'm really talking at the same pace that I was.
Well, I am going to commend Paul for making that observation because it didn't dawn on me, but it is absolutely true. We did go from...
Chuck was flying.
Right.
Chuck was flying. He was, 5 seconds after the one ball was done, he was ready to go to the other one.
So then what would be your strategy here? Is try to push him along faster?
No.
There's no strategy?
Yeah, the only strategy here is I can only worry about myself. Nothing's going to change Gary through the years, and he's proven that through the years.
You had said with Chuck you would have done something because he likes to go so fast that as his opponent you would slow bowl him basically.
Yeah, but you can't do that with Gary. You can't make him speed up because Gary's just Gary.
He won't do it. He won't do it.
He's been around a long time. I don't think you can really get in Gary's head. I think he's one of those guys you just have to just go about your business and just do the good old-fashioned out-bowl him.
There used to be a baseball player back in the 80s and 90s who was the slowest guy of all, and they used to call him the human rain delay because he'd adjust every glove, every pitch or whatever. So, I don't know whether that makes Gary Kinyon the human stuck ball return delay or whatever you want to call that. So But hey, it works for him, and he is great at it. And as Sue and I have talked many times when Gary's on the show, that you could bring back a piece of video from Gary being on the show 3 years ago, 2 years ago, and a week ago, and the setup and the form is exactly the same, and that's what makes him great.
But his accuracy is great, and I would say that any of the times that he's encountered a problem, which is normally going to be carry, is because his hand, he hasn't gotten the hit on it. And when you leave your hand in the ball that long, you will sometimes get a little, you know, you'll swell a little bit and it won't come off your hand as well. But
well, Gary has a lot of those little feel tricks. You call them feel tricks. You know, we can't see from behind us what he's trying to attempt to be able to achieve that given shot. Is he trying to throw it just a little slower? Is he trying to get it a little bit more out onto the lane? You know, this or that kind of thing. That, you know, the great bowlers are the ones that have great feel.
So Tim Finked, 3 strikes, 2 spares in his first 5 frames. Gary Kinyon, 3 strikes and a spare as he gets set for frame number 5. Has his dad Roy and his brother Bruce cheering him on here at Brad Angelo Lanes. Always good to see Roy Kinyon, the patriarch of the Kinyon bowling family.
great shot.
I got to tell you, it was great to see Mr. Kinyon when he walked in. He came right over and shook my hand, and you know, again, he was one of the guys that's just a staple around here in bowling, being the father of Gary and Carl.
He must go back a long way with your dad as well, too, right?
A very, very long way. You know, Gary's brother Carl, I would say, is very instrumental in getting me started on my path. Carl worked over at the bowling center I did a lot of practicing at, and we would sit there and eat French fries all the time together. So a lot of good memories there with Carl.
It always seems to come back to food when Carl Kinyon comes up in conversation, right?
Yeah.
Wasn't he like rattling off the menu one time when we had him on the show?
Of course. Right? Carl, give him a nice plate of fries in a bucket, and we're good to go.
We're not going to do any advertising for any of your companies.
Is that lunch coming up, by the way, here at Brad Angelo Lanes? Is that what lunch is going to be? A big bowl of big plate of fries in a bucket?
The action will continue on Beat the Champ in just a minute. Welcome back to Beat the Champ.
So to my second question, I noticed on Tom Sorce's sheet that he doesn't bowl any leagues. And, you know, for those of us in the bowling business, of course, we're a great advocator of leagues. And, you know, Gary's bowls tournaments and leagues. Is it because you're, like Tom would be away bowling tournaments that he couldn't commit to leagues? Or does leagues interrupt the practice that goes into preparing for a tournament? What's your feeling on that?
I think it's a combination of all those things, you know. Tom and I still travel together to some of the weekend tournaments that we get to go bowl, whether they're professional or even just the non-professional tournaments. If we're allowed to bowl them, pretty much we're there. So we might leave on a Friday afternoon and be gone somewhere in maybe Cincinnati, Ohio on a Saturday, and then drive over to Pittsburgh on Sunday on the way back. This coming weekend, we have a tournament up in Canada and on Saturday, and then we're going to drive down to Pittsburgh on Sunday. And, you know, by the time you get home, Tom works a 9-to-5 job, so by the time he gets home and then gets in and gets his hours at work, trying to commit to a 30 or a 35-week league isn't the easiest to do. Not to mention, sometimes on the league conditions, you know, you're out to have a good time, and sometimes your focus isn't always quite there, and you can end up bowling yourself into a slump more than you can bowl yourself out of a slump. So sometimes taking those days off and not being around the easier conditions that you find in the league type of bowling is beneficial. I bowl one night a week in league, and I use it just to be able to practice, to get some games on my body, keep the calluses nice and firm on my hand, and you know, but Gary uses it, as you see, to get matched up to league conditions, because he is and has been one of the strongest league bowlers around.
7th frame strike for Gary Kinyon. Don't forget, qualifying going on right now at the Rapids Bowling Center for next month's series of shows here on Beat the Champ. And the top qualifier in the round of 24 wins a television valued at $500 from Dirt Cheap TV. 8th frame now for Gary Kinyon, bowling well in this match. Meanwhile, Tim struggling a little bit with those corner pins, particularly the 7. You saw the open for Tim in the 6th. And oh, that had corner pins written all over it until Gary got them both to fall.
Wow.
Yeah, you know, I mean, that's the kind of carry you get when you're throwing a 12-pound ball down there.
Oh, you got a laugh out of the whole Kinyon clan over there, Angelo.
I got them all
Good job.
laughing over here.
And there's a great strike in the 8th frame for Tim Finked.
He's got to be a little bit mad at himself because he's had good ball reaction the whole time.
Well, he has, and you know, he very well could be a victim of his own transition. Wherever you're playing, the ball touches about only about 1/8 of an inch wide, and wherever you're playing, that ball is picking up oil and repositioning oil throughout that path the ball's taking. Learning how to adapt to the transition that you're creating is not the easiest thing. So looks like he changed balls. He's using the brand new Idol Pearl that just came out, and that looks like it's matching up pretty well. It could be a little too late, or what did I say? Too little too late here, as Gary's certainly in control of the match.
9th frame for Gary Kinyon, working 2 strikes in a row, as you saw on the Castellone Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram scoreboard. Oh, big shift side to side for the 10 pin, but it will not fall. This has been a classically effective Gary Kinyon match, hasn't it, Sue? Just knocking strikes down, making all of his spares, no opens, letting the other guy struggle a little bit while you just keep cruising along and doing what you do.
Gary's a shot maker, and that's what he does, and that's what he has done.
And just as I say that, there's an open in the 9th frame as he misses the spare.
That tightened this match up, boy.
So that leaves the door back open again for Tim Finked.
That's okay. We got the eraser out here for Sue, making sure we get this correctly here. Okay, we got this now.
All right, so now this is a
One thing
crucial
that's for sure
10th pin, 10th frame here for
It
Gary.
is a tight match. It's back to even, and that pin count that we talk about is definitely an issue here.
Oh, it sure is. Sure. Tim is at a 7, and with that open, Gary just went to a 5. So Tim is 2 pins ahead in count.
Oh, see, now a couple of frames ago, Gary had the same thing, and they both fell at the last minute. This time, the 7 and 10 do not fall, and that's the worst possible result at the worst possible time.
If this isn't, if this doesn't tell you what can happen in a game of bowling, nothing does. He did not miss the pocket yet. Open.
Back-to-back opens in 9 and 10 for Gary Kinyon, and wow, you talk about not the wrong way to end. That's the wrong way to end for Gary Kinyon, and very difficult 204 on the board for Gary.
Tim needs to count 18 here to solidify the win. He's at 207 pace. So a strike here will solidify it, and that wraps it up for Tim.
That wraps it up.
So what a big comeback for Tim Finked when he probably thought that he might have been out of this one. You never know what can change in this sport. That's what makes it so much fun. That's what makes it great for Tim Finked. 2 wins in a row, and we'll get to see him on next week's show. We'll come back and wrap up this match and start talking about who's in line to battle Tim Finked. When we return, it's Beat the Champ at Brad Angelo Lanes in Lockport, back right after this. Here gives Tim Finked the winner over Gary Kinyon. And Gary, it's a surprise because the last thing anybody would have ever expected is to see you finish with 2 open frames. What happened at the end there?
Well, on the 10 pin, I just kind of got a little too far right, and the thing just slid off. And then 10th frame, I got it in a little bit, and it just hit weak and left the pocket 7-10. Almost left it earlier.
Right. You got them to both fall very late.
Got to fall earlier, but that time it was like, no, not this time.
Right. Well, again, a surprise because we know how good Gary is and we know how effective you are. So to see that happen, shock to you, Brad, shock to me as well, too, wasn't it?
Yeah, I didn't see that one coming. I thought Gary had it because being around as long as he has, he knows how to shut the door when he has the chance. So. But you made great shots, and unfortunately the pins didn't cooperate. Gary, thank you. Thanks for bowling. I really appreciate you participating, and it's always good to have you here.
Right. Always good to have the Lockport legend here on the show in Lockport. The beneficiary of that for Tim Finked, Sue.
Tim, conversely, you made a ball change midway through the match because you saw things weren't really going your way, and that turned out to be a critical ball change.
Yeah, the first ball was getting a little bit lazy, and then I missed a 7-pin, and I didn't really expect to have a chance at it with Bolt and Gary. It's a new ball in the bag. I really just wanted to take a look at the lanes, and usually I would have sat there and just kept pounding 7-pins. I just now or never, so I threw it and it worked out. So.
Lesson learned. That was a great decision to make.
I failed many times, so yes, I finally learned a lesson just to go for it.
Yeah.
Good job.
See, it's all about those decisions that we talk about all the time, and sometimes you make them for good reasons, sometimes you make them for no reasons, and they work out, and they did for Tim. Tim gets to come back. We'll see him on next week's show. Sue and I will preview that show when we return. Beat the Champ at Brad Angelo Lanes in Lockport. More right after this. Did we really just see that? Did we really see Gary Kinyon go with opens in the last 2 frames to lose a match that he had a lock of winning?
I know it's hard to make us speechless, but it almost made us speechless because it just turned the whole match around just like that in 2 frames. I mean, that just shows you what can happen in a game of bowling.
Yeah, it was pretty shocking, but Tim Finked, again, the beneficiary. So now he'll try to keep his 2-match winning streak alive on next week's show. Some pretty good bowlers. Tyler Molina, Pat Brick, Rob Stefani. He'll have his work cut out for him.
And we got some left-handers there, so there's going to be some competition and some real transitions. So we'll be seeing more changes on the lane just like we saw this week.
Yeah, I think you were already ready to write Gary Kinyon's name down for your next match, weren't you?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes we have these presumptions about who's going to be going forward, and then it's all changed.
Then the sport happens.
Yep, then that happens.
Yeah. So, but that's what makes it fun. That's why we love being here. That's why we hope you love watching. You never know what's going to happen. Good reason for you to make sure you're watching next week on Beat the Champ from Brad Angelo Lanes in Lockport. We'll see you then.